All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for carving out 30 minutes of your day. We're going to walk you through how to build an app with ChatGPT with the OpenAI API. So I'm Patrick Coleman, and I'm presenting with David Gaynor here. Together, we built a language learning app called Yaya using the OpenAI API. I'll do a quick introduction of myself, then David will introduce himself as well. We're going to spend the bulk of the time telling you how we built Yaya, which should be interesting for product folks and founders. And we'll also give you a demo of building and working with the OpenAI APIs, which should be relevant for the engineers and technical folks on the call. And then at the end of the presentation, we're going to walk you through some of the lessons that we learned building Yaya and give you some guidance on how we thought through whether this was going to be a hyper-growth VC-backed opportunity or more of a lifestyle micro SaaS kind of business. And we'll carve out 10 minutes at the end, so there's time for you to ask questions. We won't have a collab this time, I'll just go ahead and get us started. So I'm Patrick. Before working on Yaya with David, I was the first business hire at Replit. And before that, I was the first hire at an education software company called People Grove. I speak a few languages, currently learning Korean, and Yaya was my chance to dive into learning how to code. So let me transfer it over to David, and he's going to dive into Yaya and how to build with the ChatGPT API.
Okay, great. I'll be talking and also at the same time looking at the waiting list as people continue to come in. I like this game. I'm playing this game of pressing admit all as fast as I can. See if I can get people to join the Zoom call. I'm David. I've been a engineer and a founder. I founded a few small companies. One of them was bought by a bigger company called Indela, and then I was the director of product there for a while before leaving and doing mostly kind of freelance product and software advising for the last few years. Yaya was an opportunity for me to dive in and get my hands dirty with AI because that was the new hotness, and it's really great. I mean, I feel like I haven't been this excited about building products since like 2010 with Web 2.0. So I feel like very exciting times, and I'm really pumped to share the things that I find exciting about building Yaya and also generally building with AI during during what is turning out to be a very exciting few years. Real fast, before we dive into a demo, can people raise their hand, and hopefully I can figure out where I would see the result of this question. People raise their hand if you are a product person, as in like somebody who builds stuff, but not an engineer. If you can raise your hand, then I can know that. Raise your hand on Zoom. So I can't, oh, there we go, cool, great. We're trying to get a sense for how many product people we have versus engineers. Okay. And then, okay, that's good. So now raise your hand if you're an engineer, you build with code, or you're, sorry, it's asked me to unmute, but I didn't mean to. Raise your hand if you build with code, or you're hoping to build with code. Raise your hand Zoom. Great. Amazing. Oh, we have a pretty even split as far as I can tell. Oh, we have a lot of both. So I'll go through some stuff that is kind of more focused on engineers and some stuff that is more focused on product people. And hopefully we'll cover all the bases. So we'll go fast through this. Let's first dive into what Yaya is. If you haven't checked it out already, you can go to yaya.press. And within yaya.press, you can click the try out button. If you click the try out button, you'll be taken to an interface that looks a lot like Google Docs. It is a language learning collaborative document editor. Everything you type in on the left gets translated on the right into whatever language. So I'm learning French, which means that I'll be taking notes in French, like je suis en étudiant. Please excuse my pretty bad French pronunciation. Also, spelling, and then that gets translated on the right. You can also go from English to French, and that will do the same thing. And then you can use the AI feature. So AI here is being used as essentially a professor, a learning assistant. So you can ask any question you want by simply making a comment. You can, and that will be sent to AI and you get a reply. You can also use AI to generate content. So you can ask AI up here for anything you want, like maybe you want a dialogue, and that will just send a message to AI which asks for a new dialogue, and it will generate it. And then of course you can modify it and add new stuff to the dialogue. So it's basically an AI-powered collaborative document editor for language learners. It's really useful for taking lessons, foreign language lessons. This is the product. If you're not a language learner, maybe not that interesting. But what is interesting is how we use AI to build it. So we can work on that. For that, we will go and jump into a bit of code first. So if you've not, I'll start with the kind of engineer side of things, and then we can go into, I guess, the more product-y side of things. Let me get the right window over here. Okay, so here is some pretty basic code for interacting with the OpenAI client. When we say building an AI bot with ChatGPT, what that actually means is we're building a bot with the OpenAI API. ChatGPT is usually what you say if you're referring to the actual interface that you communicate with if you're going to OpenAI's kind of front-end facing tool. The OpenAI API lets you communicate with a ton of different models, including GPT-4 Turbo, which is their kind of state-of-the-art that is used but is used mostly, I think, by the ChatGPT API, ChatGPT UI. This is some basic code that communicates with it. You have a client. You ask to create a new message using the client. The message includes a system message, which is a message for the AI telling it what it is, what's the purpose of this conversation, and then the user's message, like what does this phrase mean in English, and then the number of responses you want. And so if we were to run this code, we will get back a very simple response from an OpenAI. So the phrase "Hola, ¿cómo estás?" means hello, how are you? This is the most basic version of using the ChatGPT API, or the OpenAI API. Most applications won't do anything this basic these days. There's kind of more interesting things to be done when you start moving on to streaming responses, meaning you're getting back the response as it's produced by ChatGPT. So in this case now, we can run some code again, and we can get back the response in real time. As it comes in. So now you see we get back to the response streaming. This is a lightning lesson, so we're not going to dive into very much. But this is very basic, what it looks like to interact with OpenAI API, if you're not familiar with it. I will quickly say, because we only have a few minutes, the key takeaways, like the things that we learned while building this app. Number one is the AI landscape shifts very quickly. So tools that are available today might be replaced by something much, much better tomorrow. Things change very quickly. New features come out all the time. This is like, I've never seen a tech stack evolve this quickly ever in my time as an engineer. So what that means is it's really helpful to stay pretty close to the raw SDKs or APIs that are available. So there's a lot of awesome wrappers around these kind of libraries, stuff like LangChain and things that let you abstract away some of the messy logic involved with kind of handling responses from AI and building nice prompts. My learning was to kind of stay away from that stuff because if OpenAI releases a new model or some new features like functions, they released a functions feature 6 months ago, 8 months ago. It took weeks or maybe sometimes months for some of the higher level libraries to incorporate it. And in that time, if you're building apps really quickly, all of your competitors have already integrated that feature and you haven't. So it's really nice to stay close to the SDKs because the SDKs, the official SDKs, are going to stay up to date with all the features that are being released constantly. And maybe in a year or two, it would make sense to start using some of these powerful higher level libraries like LangChain and stuff like that. They're awesome and they're going to be the future. But right now, it's pretty hard for them to keep up with the pace of releases. And then the other higher level takeaway, probably another biggest thing is when you're working with AI, everything is slow, like much slower than what you're used to if you're used to building websites and or mobile apps and you're dealing with HTTP requests. Things take a long time, and you want to ideally use an architecture that is going to let you deal with long-lived responses in a way that's persistent and nice. So instead of using HTTP requests with a database where you read and write and send back a response, it's better usually to use a kind of streaming first DB like Firebase Firestore that lets you run jobs in the backend in a cron job, or in the case of Firestore, some kind of Firestore cloud function. And it might take 10 minutes, but it's writing the response continuously to an entry in the database, and that entry in the database is read continuously on the front end. So if the user closes the app or they lose their connection, the request isn't aborted. Because it might take 10 minutes for some things to run if you're doing a pretty complex AI workflow, and you want all the results to be written somewhere. So don't treat AI thinking the standard. I found that it's not so great to use like standard HTTP requests for that. Okay, that's a very quick tech demo. I'm trying to think of how much time we have to do product stuff. I would say this, since we don't have a lot of time, if you have a chance and you're a product person, the best thing you can do is spend time learning about the OpenAI playground, and assistance playground. It is super duper helpful if you're a product person to go to the assistance playground and to build an assistant inside the playground. So you can inside the assistance playground create essentially an assistant without having to write any code, and you can kind of mock up the code you want to have run. It's very accessible to product people and very powerful. I don't have time to demo today, but definitely check it out if you want to build AI assistants. There's also lots of low-code, no-code assistant builders that you can look up. Again, things change so fast, so those low-code, no-code builders are usually not up to date with the latest stuff. But in a few years, I'm sure they will be. And so no-code, low-code AI assistant builders are definitely coming, but they're still kind of slow to keep up. Okay, I think that pretty much wraps it up for the tech demo. If you took notes, you can ask questions later on. We just don't have a lot of time. But yeah, ask your questions in the chat and we'll get back to them at the end. And if we have time to do more code samples, we can do that. Right. Back to you, Pat.
Cool. So in the spirit of this being a lightning lesson, we're going to go super fast. But David, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so some of the lessons that we learned, the first version of Yaya just generated stories and dialogues and didn't have all of the interactivity that you just saw. There's a lot of expectation from users working with AI products that there is that interactivity. So that was like a key unlock for us. And David, if you can go to the next one. The AI content is still best with a human in the loop. So things have progressed a lot over the past decade, but it's one of the reasons we focused on like students working with language tutors is that the quality of the generated content still needs a bit of tweaking and polishing. You should also expect the foundational models to keep improving. So here's Sam Altman talking about GPT-5. And we spent a lot of time on Yaya v1 trying to get perfectly generated stories and doing a lot of prompt engineering. That kind of slowed us down a little bit. And the quality of the models and the generated output is just rapidly improving. So you can expect these foundational models to keep improving, focus on domain-specific features and functionality, and trust that the core underlying models will keep getting better. So then, David, if you can go to the next slide. So one of the things that we were trying to evaluate with Yaya was whether this would be a hyper-growth VC backable business, or if this was going to look more like a lifestyle micro SaaS business. These are very different paths to go down with different upsides and different considerations. I'm going to walk you through some of the things that we tried to evaluate when we were thinking if this could be a hypergrowth opportunity. And then we ultimately settled on this being more of a lifestyle business, and David will walk you through some recommendations there. So if you want to build a hypergrowth business, David, if you go to the next slide, you should pick a big market. So we saw Duolingo in the space. We know there are a lot of language learners. We thought maybe we could build something better that would get people reading native content sooner in a foreign language, and could reach a lot of folks, which is why we focused on building something for all languages rather than picking just a couple. If you go to the next slide. The lean startup advice still is valid. You should talk to users early and often as much as you can. We talked to tons of users, but I think we could have talked to even more users sooner before we spent a few months building a lot of the early functionality. If you go to the next one, you want to iterate quickly. So the first version of Yaya was designed to take professional human translations and map them to original content. We moved on from that pretty fast. If you go to the next slide. Next, we were trying to take public domain classics and provide translations for those. And then we ended up settling on Yaya v1.0, which was having ChatGPT generated stories. At this point, we had really built a really capable product before validating that people really wanted this core thing. And then we ended up going in a little bit of a different direction with 2.0, focusing on students working with language tutors. So the big takeaway here is like, don't overbuild before you've figured out your audience. And then finally, painkillers, not vitamins. So Speak is one of the best performing apps in the language learning category right now. And two of the things that they have done really well is focusing on English, which is not just a personal enrichment activity, but something that people are wanting to do for educational or professional advancement. So it's a real painkiller. And they're focusing not on reading, but on communications and talking. And that has allowed them to grow very, very fast and reach a lot of people by focusing on that English learning space and communication specifically. All right, now David will take you through some recommendations for lifestyle businesses.
Awesome. So I'm going to say a few things that might sound contradictory to what Pat just said, but they're not, because lifestyle business is a totally different decision than raising money and having a VC-backed business. It's no better or worse. It is a very different, sometimes opposite decision. First, I just want to say, like, if you make a lifestyle decision, I want to just mention that there's the upsides are very different. So the upside of doing something like a VC, both me and Pat have made those decisions. We've done those kind of companies. You have a pretty small chance at making a lot of money, like $100 million. And you have a pretty good chance of working really, really hard for like 5 to 10 years. And also pretty good chance of meeting and working with amazing other people with a great team. If you choose to do lifestyle, you have a really, really good chance of building something that you love, which is great. And you have a okay chance of making, like, I don't know, $1,000 or one order of magnitude higher at $100,000 at most. And then you have like a pretty low chance of working with other people ever, maybe. But you don't have to work, 14 hours a day, every day for 5 years. So if you're gonna do the lifestyle path, which is what we eventually went with Yaya, I would say be the user. So different than what Pat said, where you test with users early and often, you are your user. Test with yourself early and often. If you're not using your app every day, then build something different. You want to build what you want to use, and you are your main user. Also, be your developer. So ideally, you build the app by yourself, because it's unlikely you're going to be able to ever afford to pay somebody else to build it for you. So if you're a product person, this means using low code, no code. If you have coding skills, then that means building it yourself, but building it in a way that you can continue to build it and maintain it without a huge team behind you. So making architectural decisions that make sense, keeping the code small, super small, because you're the only one who's going to be building on it. And then finally, know what you want. If you really want to launch a VC-backed company, go do that and don't be the user and go find other people to use your app. But if you really want to build something that you love, then do that, because there's nothing wrong with having a lifestyle business. For Yaya, we have probably, I don't know, 1,000 people who use it every week. That's amazing. But also, the most important thing is that I use it every day, and I love that. And it's changed the way that I learn languages. And that's worth every hour we put into building it. So that's my advice for lifestyle side. Okay, let's do Q&A. I think that's probably where we're at now. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, let's jump into Q&A. We can start taking questions. And David, if you leave it on the next slide, there are some links that people can screenshot also.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Yogi. I have a
Okay.
question. Can I ask over the phone?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So my question is, the UI look very intuitive, and I'm curious, as you were defining the scope, what tool were you using to put the user, for the storyboarding and the UI mockups? Actually, first the storyboarding, defining what do I want to do.
I can take this, Pat, if
Take it.
that's okay. Cool. That's a great question, Yogi. I would actually, so I mean, if we were a bigger company with a big team, we would have storyboarding tools, and we would have mock-up tools, be using Figma, and that would be really effective. For the again, like this gets back to the be the developer and be the user slides. Because I'm the only developer on it, we just stick with the UI frameworks that give you everything without any additional tweaking needing. So we use mature UI. We don't have to make any UI decisions as a result of that. And then in terms of the user flows, like how what actually makes sense in terms of how do you access certain features, that gets back to just we use it every day. And so whenever there's a place that doesn't make sense for us, we change it. And that has led to a pretty good intuitive interface. Though of course it could be better. If we had resources, we would actually do storyboarding and put effort into that. But you can get very far with almost no effort if you just use frameworks like MUI or Amp Design, these kind of like built-in design frameworks.
Angie,
Did that
do you
answer the question?
Oh, go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks. Angie, do you want to come off of mute and ask your question?
Angie?
Okay. Ty is asking, what's the cost to maintain or improve Yaya each month?
In terms of hours, maintenance costs, I think it's not much to just maintain it exactly as it is. Probably it's like a 30-minute a day kind of thing during the week, during the work week. So like yeah, 5 days a week. I put in I basically every morning look at Log Rocket, which is how we record users' interactions with the site, and then if anything looks seriously off, I can put a fix. But usually it's nothing much to do. And again, that's because we built on the whole stack on Firebase. There's very little server-side code. Everything kind of runs. There's no server maintenance needed. Keeping the code light and building with on top of backend as a service like Firebase makes it a lot easier. Other questions?
Raymond, do you want to come off mute and ask?
Well, my question was, do you foresee the domain of like UI UX going through a significant change shortly in terms, because I recall when there was, in development over the years, there's been different focus, right? There was like, I remember there was a time we had like mobile first. That was like a big thing. Everything was mobile first, and then we have all these frameworks that come in, and we really didn't have to worry about what platform or what format you were in. It was either, like Material, UI. It's like, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you're thinking that with the introduction of LLMs, that how we interact with apps are going to change as significantly as they did when we focused on mobile.
I have thoughts, but Pat, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I'll let you take this one. I'll respond to one of the questions in the thread.
Cool. That's a really great question. I think about that a lot. So on Yaya, what I discovered when we do user testing, and I do user testing, especially with a lot of teachers who are using the app, it's very interesting. For like the normal user who's going to use the app, actually, we still want the normal design, kind of the normal rules about design still apply. We still want to have kind of nicely laid out buttons. We want to have kind of tiered ability to discover features. All that still applies. But for power users, an LLM totally changes the interface in a way. So for all our teachers, they do everything in the chat window. So all of their interactions with the site are just by asking things to happen down here. And right now, it's all about interacting with the document, but I'm imagining in some point in the next few months, I'll add something where they can do things like change the language settings from the chat window, or start playing the audio for the document from the chat window. It's like, if you don't know what you want, it's great to have a normal UI to discover what you can do. But if you're a teacher and you know exactly what you want to do because you're a power user and you're making money off this, it's amazing to have the LLM as a way to describe exactly what you want the app to do and then have it happen. So I think LLMs do lead to a big shift here, but it's really, and so far, in my experience, for power users. Does that answer your question?
Yes, in terms of, specifically this particular application. I was just thinking like wondering if you foresee a paradigm shift in how we as humans interact with this information. I recall doing some stuff early on with Amazon and Google, voice apps like, the chat bots, but the early stuff with dialogue, and we really had high hopes that voice was going to change a lot. We were like, well, everything's going to be voice, but that never panned out. People didn't take to that. They still want the window. And I'm wondering if that's, if you feel like we should keep our eyes open for something that's going to change that,
Yeah, well, I'm as interested in that as you are. I wish I knew the answer.
And David, I'm going to jump in real quick. I just want to do a very fast time check. We're almost at time. I can certainly stay on the call. David, are you able to stay on for a little bit longer too?
Yeah, for sure. If there's still questions, I'm happy to stay on and answer them.
So yeah, we'll keep answering questions, but if you have to drop, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate your time. I think I see Angie on video now. And I know you had a question earlier. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for sharing, and it's been a great presentation. One thing you were talking about as a lifestyle business, how do you stay connected with the community, talk to other people? You're saying you're not working with a whole lot of other people and developers, but keeping tabs on what's going on. How is it that you do that?
Yeah, I can share my perspective. I'll let David share his too. Like, I'm involved in some different communities. There's one focused on early stage startups called Founders You Should Know that is really fantastic. On the finance and ops side, I'm part of a community called Operators Guild. Whether you're at a lifestyle business or just an early stage startup with a big team, it's really great to find these professional communities for your particular like role or focus area to like just, whether it's just like group therapy or like advice on tools to use or whatever you need, strategic questions, just friendship. It's really good to find these folks both online and in person if possible. David, do you want to share your perspective too? Oh, go ahead, Angie.
No, I'm very interested in those like in person or online, like you were saying, like having a conversation like this and not just reading other people's responses to blog questions and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, that everything Pat said, I totally agree with. Finding online communities that are around the kind of communities of practice is awesome. And the specific thing that I do to kind of stay sane and to stay connected with the other people who build stuff in my community is I do weekend hackathons. It's not like an official hackathon. I don't like, nobody organizes it, but I just will just call friends or message friends and say, hey, this Saturday, do you want to spend 4 hours building a thing? And it's pretty, we usually don't finish the thing we build. And it's always totally unrelated to whatever I'm actually building. So I never build anything related to language learning or to any of the other projects I'm on. It's just like other cool stuff that comes up that I'm never gonna have the time to fully build out, but I want to explore. And it's really fun to explore with one or two other people. And that to me is very low lift. And you don't need a code to do it either. Again, you can use the assistance Playground or some of the other low code, no code builders, just to kind of experiment and see what's possible, but with another person or two other people.
I love that, like a garage band.
Yes. Oh, that's a good way to describe it. I'm going to start saying that instead of hackathon. It's a Saturday band practice.
Awesome, thanks.
No problem. Thanks for the question. Any other questions?
I think Asha, maybe, if you want to come off mute. Or maybe Masood.
Hi, thanks. I just want to hear your take on the evolution of the code generation and how the whole AI will impact the ability for people to actually generate code, and do you think it will lead to it becomes so sophisticated they actually can build sophisticated web apps, etc.?
I think it's interesting that you have both David and myself on here. I'll share the perspective of more of a beginner coder and what things have looked like for me. I coded a little bit in school, and like, you know, in the early days, like you had to go buy a book or something like that, or you could find things online. You were digging through like man pages in Linux and things like this too. Then, you know, when I started working on Yaya with David, I was relearning to code again and basically learning how to build web applications. And at the time, I just was going through tutorials like YouTube and things like that. Mostly, it was before a lot of these AI code assistants had really taken off. Um, GitHub Copilot existed. When I started using that, it felt pretty magical. And I was like asking questions in ChatGPT and copying code back and forth. The state of the art has really shifted a lot since then. And I think the two things I'm most excited about are Replit on the one hand, for like a cloud-based coding environment, and there's a fantastic community there too. And Cursor, if you like a more VS Code style experience, and I'll paste links in after as well. But when we were building Yaya, David had written all of the API code, and using some of these AI tools now, like I wanted to write some and play with it myself. And over like, you know, 2 days, I was able to watch a YouTube tutorial and build a little app myself, getting a lot of these AI assists. So I think like the it's getting a lot easier for people who are a little bit technical to build really compelling things on their own. And David, I'll let you share the perspective of a senior engineer.
I 100% agree with everything Pat said. I think for me, if I'm jumping into a new domain that I'm not familiar with, AI makes it so much easier. It's just like Stack Overflow, but like 10 times, 100 times better. And I do fear that my job will be replaced at some point in the next 5 to 10 years. Yeah, I don't know what that will look like. I mean, it's definitely AI is not there yet. I've yet to see an AI that can like really create a project or even really code snippets consistently that I would say like that I would pass code review if I was reviewing the code. It seems like it doesn't have. I mean, part of that's just because it doesn't have the context of the project and the kind of code style that you're working on and all that stuff. But that, of course, will change and that will get better, and that's easy to solve, I think. The direction it's going, I feel like, yeah, you'll need a lot fewer engineers and probably just like some more experienced engineers who kind of oversee everything in the next few years. And that's awesome. I mean, like I love coding and I don't want to lose my job, but it's amazing that so many people will be able to build cool stuff in 5 to 10 years. That's really great.
Thank you so much.
And Yogi, did you have another question?
I did. This is actually a follow from a previous one. I looked at the site you shared, the material UI one. My question was slightly different. You know, I want to kind of put a scenario for you, which is, let's say, you know, you started to build this app and you were like, okay, it needs to have 10 features. And then you're like, this is how the customer journey is going to look like. They will come to this page and they would want to do this, this, and this. You know, usually like as a this is like 2 steps before going to Figma or any other tool. You know, I for example will go to Notability and I'll start to like scratch some features and some UI, but that is not good enough. It's not clean enough. I can't show it to someone. And I'm curious if you end up like documenting your features using a particular tool or technique, and then also documenting the user journey as almost like a scratch pad that you can then turn into a tool, but a tool for that. Like there's one I use called Excalibur, I believe is called. I'll post it here. That's really cool, but something that it's not good for customer journeys.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's posted
Oh,
in the chat, by the way.
cool. I'll post a
Yogi.
couple things in the chat and then I'll let David take a crack too. Yeah, I think like as David said earlier, like just the two of us, like using the product ourselves, like working closely together and like trying to build a lot fast. Like the most important thing that we could be doing was like writing code together. And but certainly like as you get to a bigger scale and like maybe as you're building things for users that are not necessarily yourself, this was kind of David's advice on like the lifestyle versus hypergrowth business, like you absolutely need to have these user journeys like mapped out, do a lot of research, really understand them very well. I think Figma is really the best in class tool for this, and I'll paste the link again. It's what I've used in professional settings, in like hypergrowth settings, and it's sort of industry standard right now. Some of the things that I've also used Excalibur a lot professionally, and just like for a little like getting flows built on the side, and I see it on YouTube tutorials and stuff like that. Very, very popular and very great tool as well. Some of the things that I've been excited to play with is like Vercel's v0.dev and their the UI project from Shadcien that's going with that as well. So like 100%, whether it's MUI or other tools, like you should use a UI component library so you're not writing a lot of the like basic front end code yourself. A lot of these have great Figma integrations as well, so you can do mockups of user journeys and landing pages and things like this and app pages inside of Figma, and then get the code and the components for that really easily. And but v0.dev, for example, like you can type in natural language and it'll generate like a component or a landing page or other like app features for you from that natural text, and you can iterate back and forth. And then you can copy the code, bring it into your project, and start working on that. So like things are getting a lot easier to like save yourself a lot of time. But David, do you want to share some stuff too?
I don't have too much to add. One thing I would actually build on your question, Yogi, and say, I wish, or rather, I found that when I work on more complex projects, things that I or somebody else are trying to raise venture funding for, and we need to be building for users that aren't ourselves, it is a perpetual pain point that keeping track of all the different user journeys, and probably most important, maintaining them and testing them is like a huge problem. And I've tried over the years to build things that would make it easier to kind of define a user journey and then have it be automatically tested using integration testing tools, Puppeteer, stuff like that. I think AI will make that a lot easier, and I'm waiting for that product to get built. I feel like in the next 6 months or a year, there'll be some product that will let you use natural language to define, here are the steps the user needs to go through, and then it will automatically give you like mocks, and then also be able to run tests on your site once that thing is built, to ensure that that journey stays workable and it's something that the users can continue to use. I don't know of anything that exists for it yet, but I share your pain in that case.
Totally makes sense. Thanks. Yeah, I see the same gap right now, actually, even for lifestyle businesses. For example,
Yeah.
I'm putting a UI together and I want to share it only with two people. So it's a small group, but I want to show them something nice without going to Figma, without going to any of the tools. And today I just scratch pad on Notability, which doesn't just look clean. And I wish that there was something that looked cleaner, or
Try
something.
V0 for that. For that purpose, I think try V0 too. You could just take screenshots of the stuff it gives you, even, and it might give you. It would be probably pretty good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any other final questions?
Yeah, actually, I have two questions. I'll just go quickly. So my first question is, so you guys are using ChatGPT LLM, right? So have you guys considered other LLMs like Anthropic one or the Facebook?
Yeah.
So
nowadays, a lot of the features on Yaya right now use Claude. Anthropic's. For generation, we use Anthropic. For content generation, for answering questions, we still use OpenAI. There's kind of like different places where each one excels. But yeah, in terms of why make these different decisions, for a while, Anthropic didn't have the capacity that we needed. So if you can only have 10 requests per minute or something like that, then it doesn't work for us. And whereas OpenAI was able to scale up pretty fast. Nowadays, Anthropic's awesome, and they're not super duper reliable, not as much as OpenAI, but in theory, they let you have 1,000 requests per minute, which is enough for us. They produce much better creative content in our experience than GPT-4 Turbo, but I'm sure that will change. Again, like Pat said, the models are always evolving, and it's pretty easy to switch from one to another in our experience.
Yeah, the way that a lot of people are evaluating is like, as David mentioned, like generation, you can use one model, like answering questions, there's other models that are going to be better suited. These different models are going to have different capabilities and different cost structures as well. So it's worth thinking through like what functionality do you want to build, which model is going to support that best, and what cost are you comfortable with for that particular functionality and for the volume that you're seeing for that particular feature or things like that. And as David said, also, it's very easy to like run multiple models side by side.
I see. So are you saying like it's not that complex to use multiple models in the same application, but if you are given a chance, like let's say one model has everything you want, then you would go for that, right?
Sure. Yeah. And some models will be harder than others. If there's a model that if you're using one of the open models and you have to run it yourself, that's basically out of the question. The cost for that is way too high. But if you're using Anthropic or ChatGPT, Anthropic just copied the same. Anthropic's SDKs use almost the exact same syntax as OpenAI by design, which is great. So it's almost a drop-in replacement. And I imagine a lot as other models become available, they'll probably do the same thing. It's pretty easy to run them side by side.
Cool. And yeah, just last question, I think along the same line. So if I can ask, like, how much does it cost you? Mainly, I think in terms of the APIs that you are using from different LLMs to run your app.
Good question. It can vary based on how many people are using what they're using it for. Turns out the most expensive thing is Google Translate. It's like 10 times more expensive than using Translate with GPT 3.5 is about 10 times cheaper, or even more, 20 times cheaper than Google Translate. So, like if somebody tries to translate a book on Yaya, it gets pretty pricey. But as long as people are just using it for language lessons, one line at a time kind of translation, it's not too bad. It varies month to month, but in the order of magnitude of like $100 a month. And just in terms of anything outside, how that breaks down is like mostly Google Translate, a little bit for AI, like maybe like $10 or $5 a month for the AI. It's actually very cheap, and then and then zero for hosting and everything else.
Cool. Thanks for all the insights. Helpful.
No problem.
And I think Samuel asked for or someone else asked for the tools that we used. I wrote those up in the blog post. This is a little bit old and focused on the tools that I use, more of a novice coder, but I'll paste a link there as well.
All right. Thanks so much for reposting all that stuff. If anybody wants if there's no more questions, we can wrap it up, and feel free to, I don't know how people contact us using any of the contact information that's on our personal websites if you have other questions, or on LinkedIn or any place else. And thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, if you go build things and you learn from this, and like 2 months from now, you're like, this was so helpful, I like built my app, we would really absolutely love to see that. So please keep in touch. This was a lot of fun for us.
Yes. Amazing. Bye, guys.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.